The story starts with the little girl who walks to meet her father at night. She said to herself, "Father, he's calling for me." What it could be. I wondered if it's about my birthday tomorrow. Father. She saw a man whom she had never seen before sitting in her father's seat. Her father said, "The child has arrived." She was shocked and said, "Father, what is this? Who is that sitting in father's chair?" He grasped her hand. The man said, "That's the girl. She's pretty one. Such a waste to use her for an offering." The little girl looked at the man with astonished eyes. While her father grasped her shoulders, she said, "Father, what's because this will aid his majesty?" He said, "I won't change my mind." She cried and said, "The day before my 12th birthday, I was abandoned by the person I loved more than anything, my father." 6 years later, the girl was attacked by some men, and they said her, "Whoa, where'd you find a pretty little thing like this?" The maid covered the girl with her body and said, "You jerks, don't you dare lay a hand on her ladyship." The stranger laughed and said, "Who's this little shrimp?" The girl said, "Please stop, my father is the Marquis of Northlands." One of the men said, "As if the daughter of a marquis would go around all alone with the little maid. Tiara again here, missy. Specially, alas, with your looks, we could get a pretty penny for the like of you. Had we come along any later than we did, some other fellas would have come for you. You can bet on that." Little Uni shouted and said, "Leave us alone, you big meanies." They only laughed and said, "This one will go for some good coin to some people like young girls." Then stretched out his arms as if trying to grab the young lady and said, "Stop messing around and come with us, little lady." The man who had been blocking alley fell backward with unexpected sound. Everyone turned their heads in surprise and stiffened at once as if they had made an agreement together. At the end of the alley, there was a man standing under the sunset. He was a tall man in a black cloak, with a mask covering his face. The man shouted, "Who the hell did that?" The tall man did not answer, and stepped on the head of the man who had fallen under his feet. There was a sound of a cracking bone. However, the man underneath had already passed out and stopped moving. The group of angry men pulled out and escaped. However, the young lady and the maid were still embracing each other tightly. The young girl said, "Are you going to sell us too?" "You're going to, aren't you?" The man rolled up his man and then say, "Are you okay?" She said, "Is not safe here, let me escort you back home." The child maid shouted, "Thank you for the food." Uni, the starving child, started eating before the young lady. Rena watched her for a moment before turning her head towards the figure at the side of the room. She said to him, "Thank you, this is the first time anyone's helped us so safely." And he said, "I didn't think you'd actually come with me." "Huh, but you told us to follow if we didn't have anywhere else to go." "But you do not know the first thing about me." "Well, we know each other's name. I am Rena Rubel and you're Lynn. We are strangers who only know each other's name." The two's expressions were baffled at the other's belief, which was far from their own. She said to him, "If you want us to leave." He said, "No, it's not that, I'm just saying it's unexpected, relax." Uni Shushi said, "Wow, he made it all awkward and now he tells us to relax." He said to her, "You said you were the daughter's Marquis Rubel." He laughed and said, "I never heard that he had one." She said, "Officially he doesn't, but there are people who know that he has a daughter." He said, "If it's unofficially, then is she an illegitimate child? Why don't you head on back home?" Rena's answer left Lynn speechless. "I don't know your deal, but the capital's even worse than ID is here. Something like WH80 happened today can happen again. You stand out, you know you're pretty. That makes you very noticeable, and it would be easy to sell you for some good quick coin. There will also be people who'll want something in return for helping you out." Her eyes shock and say, "Are you saying you want something in return as well?" Lynn contemplated, then got up from the sofa. Rena seemed to be surprised, but he approached her calmly and pretended not to notice. Then he untied the dagger from his waist and put it on the table where Rena was sitting. She said, "What is this?" He said to her, "Your means of defense. Use it when you must." She say, "How?" He said to, "If I come after you, stab me with it." Lynn answered clearly and sat back on the sofa. Rena kept switching her gaze to the dagger she had received and to Lynn, who was keeping his distance. Rena, who was laughing quietly, said softly, "You're the same as me." Lynn turned and said, "What is that supposed to mean?" She said, "You're pretty too." Lynn's words stopped short. Lynn looked at her as if witnessing something outrageous. However, Rena's eyes were still as innocent as before. Lin asked himself why would she say that could it be? Is she mentally slow? Lin thought about it. It was already night by the time Rena and Uni finished eating. As it got darker outside, Lin shed off his cloak and said, I'll sleep on the sofa. You guys sleep on the bed. Rena and Uni also wrestled into the bed as the room darkened. Deep into the night, Rena, who had fallen into a light sleep, opened her eyes to the sound of someone's presence. Shaman was looking down at her. It was Lin. Rena looked at him, who had come closer in the dark, and asked quietly, Do I stab now? He said no. As soon as Lin spoke, a creaking sound came from the outside. Sounds of footsteps on the hardwood outside the corridor were heard. Hurry, Lin urged Rena and Uni, who was still asleep, to go under the bed. Then, the door flung open abruptly. Where are you? A shouting voice was heard and then cut off midway as soon as the sound of a blunt object hitting something echoed. Upon the opening door, Lin charged at the people who were coming in at night. The men shouted and said, You bastard! Han over the girl, the one you took from me. Lin said, That's no way to talk in someone else's home. You should leave while you still can. The leader of the men gritted his teeth. Don't regret it, you damn bastard. The man pulled out a dagger. He made a cut in his palm using the tip of the dagger. Lin's eyes widened in surprise at the unpredicted action. Crimson blood dripped. Lin yelled, and the terrible smell of sulfur spread along with it. Shortly after, smoke began to bloom, and a shape rapidly grew. An unknown being appeared amidst the ominous storm. It trod on the ground with 4 legs. The smell of sulfur irritated Lin and had him gritting his teeth. The fool had opened the path to the tomb. In order to take back the woman, he had offered his blood. Call upon the dead from the bottomless abyss. Having grasped the situation, Lin reached out for the sword on the wall. At the same time, the dead that had just opened its eyes came upon him. Kong! There was not enough space to draw the sword, so he blocked it point blank. Rena rushed out to the middle of the room and said, Please stop fighting. When the dead crushed a scabbard using his teeth, Lin shook him off, then abandoned the sword altogether. The man said, Lady, you are so naive. Rena said, You are the ones who are naive. Please stop this. Such violence will not be forgiven. The attackers laughed and told her that she was not healthy. The monster headed towards the girl and chopped the undead's head off. And everyone stood there with their mouths open, and they were very surprised. The girl said, You may want to pick your jaws up off the floor. Who's a naive one now?